Thank you so much for being on the call with me today. Can you tell me a little bit about your legal background? We're so thrilled to have you at Fair Business, and for all the people listening, they are going to feel confident that everything is getting checked off by our legal department, but we have really, really solid volunteers working to gather all the information together so that the lawyers can take a look at it. So tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and why you're so switched on with all these legal things that you're playing with at the moment.
Yeah, basically, as most people, I've had issues with the law and the system in the past, and getting other people to represent my best interests didn't seem to be very effective, cost-wise, time-wise, and for the outcome. So I looked into understanding what was going on. I'm actually by trade a computer technician, but that involves a lot of understanding things, researching things. I really love reading, which does help a lot. And yeah, I represented myself in a number of cases against departments and government departments and individuals and insurance companies. I've followed them through. Some of them weren't the outcome that I would have liked, but it was, that's the way the system works. But most of them I was successful. Went up against barristers. Just basically, if you look at the issues, read the legislation, it's not written in real legalese. It can be a little bit convoluted, a little bit complicated on the first read, but like something, if you don't understand it, you just keep looking at it, you make references to other things, other acts. What's really important, I found, is the legislative interpretive acts. They tell us how the legislation is to be interpreted as law. And then there's all the intrinsic material behind all of that has to be taken into account. But the Parliament makes laws or subordinate legislation based on instruments that they're not actually, they're like their directions. They're not actually law unto themselves. They rely on previous existing legislation and case precedences and speeches that were given when the bills were introduced, and lots of things. It's all in the Legislative Interpretations Act, and there's a few of them that are all relevant through. And yeah, it's understanding how it all ticks, getting through all down to it, and yeah, it's being reasonable, and it's going to the system and saying, look, I don't think what you're doing is according to this. So far, I've been being mostly ignored. My state member's been doing a little bit. I got a letter back from the Attorney General, Michaela Cash for federal, from one of her advisors, saying that one of my reference at the Biosecurity Act is a concurrent power that the state should be abiding by, which makes, at least in Queensland and across the state, as far as a concurrent power is Section 51 of the Constitution sets out the powers that the federal government can have, and Section 109 says that as a concurrent, the state can have power and the federal can have power, but where they contradict, the federal power wins out. And when that's contested, the Parliament can make decisions, and there's supposed to be oversight and supposed to be people looking at that and making sure it's all fair and good. But when you're waiting 4 months for information back from them on a request, but if they don't do it, you can progress through to the courts. It would be the Supreme Court, and they would make a decision based on that. And if you look at the case history, overwhelmingly, it's been decided that Section 109 is totally relevant, and where the state oversteps the powers set by the federal, it is brought back into line. It's not made invalid unless it can't be limited to become capable of operating concurrently with it. And concurrently basically means with the same power. And yeah, so it's
so good.
It's a puzzle.
Yeah, it is a puzzle, and I'm so thrilled that you put your hand up to volunteer for Fair Business Australia, folks. those of you who are listening, you will hear from our volunteer's introduction that he really knows his stuff and he loves to read and he's really, really switched on. And again, just to reassure you that anything that we will be putting out from Fair Business Australia, whilst it's compiled by volunteers who love their stuff, it does get a final look over by our legal team. But I'm going to move into some FAQs now, because Victoria is a bit of a plate of spaghetti now because of the permanent pandemic bill that's come in. So I worked with one of the other volunteers this afternoon to compile some questions so that we can actually make a little bit of sense for business owners who are listening. And you'll be able to go through all these FAQs in different chapters. So you won't have to listen to the whole conversation. You can go through different chapters.